So, yeah, welcome to the Denali Borough Assembly meeting for January 2021. Thanks everybody for joining us. We don't have any pending ordinances on our agenda tonight, so we don't have any public hearing. So we'll just go ahead and get started with our regular meeting. And to do that, ask if Mayor Walker would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Be happy to. Thank you. We have the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and I would ask the clerk to call the roll for us this evening.
Okay, Dominic Canelli. I see you.
Okay, I
There
think
you
I'm unmuted. Yep, I'm present.
Thank you. Jake Hill. Lisa Minor.
Here.
Joe Chatfield. Talon Shreve.
Here.
Eileen Holmes.
Here.
Jeff Stanger. Krista Zappone.
I'm here.
Jared Zimmerman.
Here.
We have a quorum, and I did hear from Mr. Hill and Mr. Chatfield that they were both not going to be able to make it tonight.
I would make a motion to excuse Mr. Hill, Mr. Chatfield, and Mr. Stanger from tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Zappone to excuse the absent members. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to excusing the absent members? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. And we'll move on to public comments.
I have none.
I do have an email. It looks like it came in yesterday evening. So I wasn't able to email it out early enough for you to read it. So if you'd like me to read it out loud, I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Get it on the record.
Okay, this is from James and Susan Govin. And they say, Happy New Year to the Mayor and Denali Borough Assembly members. We want to highlight that this month marks the 5-year anniversary of the passage and approval of the Planning Commission Resolution PC 16-02 to address impacts and safety concerns for commercial ATV activity in the Dry Creek/Otto Lake area. While the Assembly did not take action then, we hope you can enact changes this year to address these ongoing issues. While the 2021 tourism numbers are unpredictable, you should be aware that even with the coronavirus pandemic, the 2020 season still had its share of ATV traffic. Denali ATV was renting Polaris RZR 1000 ATVs to customers for self-guided tours, along with a paper map, including where they can and they cannot ride. These are not your average Alaskan four-wheelers, but 110 horsepower race-ready ATVs. On occasion, these unguided guests were riding their high-powered ATVs not just on borough property, but trespassing on private property as well, ignoring no trespassing signs. Without guides, Denali ATV has no control over where their guests go, nor what impact they may have on existing roads, trails, or tundra. Would this type of activity be tolerated in the village area of the borough? We ask that you take this into consideration and make our concerns a priority to address this year. In addition, we'd like to understand the status and next steps of the original 80-acre, now 280-acre lease application in the Dry Creek/Otto Lake Hilltop area. What's the lease application process for borough land? And do these applications go through a public review process? We thank you for your commitment to the borough residents. Regards, James and Susan Govan, Dry Creek of Healy. And let me just double check, make sure nothing came in the last minute. Nope, that's all I've got.
Okay. All right, thank you. And just make ourselves accessible here in virtual world. If stuff does come in, we can open back up and receive some public comments later on in the meeting at a break if it makes sense. So let us know if anything comes in. But if not, I would move on to approving the agenda.
I'd like
Ms. Holmes?
to amend the agenda to add communication appearance, bring it up above the reports.
Sure. We'll move item G up to and just in front of item F there. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Holmes to amend the agenda to move up our appearance here, and has been seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to the amendment? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. Any other discussion of the agenda? Anyone opposed to approving the agenda as amended? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous and move on to our minutes. And we've got the minutes from our December 9th public hearing and regular meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Shreve to approve the minutes. And it's been seconded. Any discussion or changes of the minutes? Anyone opposed to approving the minutes as submitted? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous, and we'll move on to an appearance from Ms. Lori Geek, our auditor, regarding our fiscal year 2020 financial audit. Thanks for joining us. And if you would unmute yourself, Ms. Geek, we could follow along with you.
Okay, there I am. Sorry. I
There
thought
we
I had
got you.
unmuted. Okay, does everyone have their financial statements or a copy of their financial statements in front of them, or?
Yes.
And I thought I would just go through the financial statements. You may have noticed on financial statements this year that our accounting firm has a different name. In the last summer, we were Kohler, Schmidt and Hutchison for all those years, and we merged with another local firm here in Fairbanks, so we could better serve our clients. It was about the same. They had the same type of firm as us, and so we're now a larger firm, and so we feel that they did about the same kind of work, and so we merged. And now we're going to, we're in the process right now of changing our name. We were using Cook and Hagerberg, which was the surviving firm, but we will have a new firm name hopefully this month. We're going to be Alliance CPAs. So a whole entirely new name, but all the same people. So that's good. So tonight I'm going to present the results of your audit of June 30 to 2020. So I'll start off with the auditor's report, which is on the first page. And the auditor's report is really our responsibility is to present our opinion on the financial statements. The manager's responsibility is actually to prepare the financial statements, and they prepare the financial statements with my assistance. We prepare the financial statements from your QuickBooks. And our opinion is what's known as this year is an unmodified opinion, which is known as in slang as a clean opinion. So we did our opinion on December 8th of 2020. And we also issued our report on other reporting required by by government auditing standards, which is your internal control report. That was the internal control, independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting. This is a report where we would report anything that we consider to be a material weakness in your internal controls. We are not reporting any material weaknesses in your report. So you have a clean opinion and no findings on your internal control. So I'll just briefly go through your financial statements. This is as of a point in time, June 30, but there's still some interesting things that we can, discuss and look at for the financial statements. On page 7 is what's known as your statement of net position. That's really what your accounting looks like if you're a business. It's known as the business presentation because it has your capital assets in it, and it also has your debt, which your debt is really related to your PERS and OPEB pension liability and your estimated liability for your landfill closure. So at the top is your assets. You can see that you have a strong cash position. You had at June 30 a strong cash position, $8,959,000 in cash, and your investments are strong, $6,860,000. You have capital assets of $21 million. Primarily, those are the school buildings, and in the business type activities, that's your landfill, transfer stations, landfill building. You have a small amount of your what we would call your normal current liabilities, which are your account payables and your accrued payroll. You can see that you did have a grant advance at year end. Now, what that was your CARES funding that you had received. You received that before June 30, but had not dispersed it yet. So it's considered an unearned grant advance on your books. And then you can see your long-term liabilities are your PERS and OPEB, retirement liabilities. PERS is now at about $791,000. That fluctuates each year based on the actuarial report. It has been higher than that. This is about the lowest it's been, and your OPEB liability is only showing at $23,000. And your estimated liability for your landfill closure at this point in time is $840,000. That's based on, we'll discuss, there's a note in the back where we'll discuss that, but that's based on your most current estimate of closure and post-closure costs. And this is up to date as of June 30. This is what we've accrued toward that liability. The bottom part is your net position. You can see you have a strong net position, $33 million. We're showing the permanent investment, which is the $3,356,000 is the part of the permanent fund that is considered non-spendable. And then since you are a forward funding, you have restricted your $4,189,425, which is your general fund, your anticipated general fund expenditures for FY21, which still leaves you in your governmental activities with unrestricted $3,922,000 and in your business type 1.004 million. So you have unrestricted total net position, which is positive of $4,926,000 as of June 30, 2020. Now the right-hand column is the component unit of the school district component unit, and we present their numbers and rely on the opinion of the school district auditors to present a high-level component unit numbers. They also have a positive unrestricted balance as of June 30, 2020. The next two pages are what you would call your profit and loss for the borough as a whole. Now this includes, this would have your depreciation, all your change in liabilities and everything. So the governmental activities wound up with a positive change in net position of $237,000, but the business type activities had a negative $157,000. Now this includes everything. So you can see that depreciation is a large expense on your books for this presentation. It's over 400 and some thousand. But the most striking thing when I was looking at it this time is that the change in the overnight accommodations tax, which we're used to last year. At this point, we had over 4 million. It was 4,164,000. So you can see this year 2,832,000, which is a substantial decrease. In that there's also a large amount of here capital assets transferred from the school district, and that was the completion of the Cantwell roof project. When the school district conducts a project on their books, where they're the grantee, then when it's completed, they make a transfer of that asset to the borough, and then it's the borough's responsibility from that point forward, as the school buildings are a responsibility of the borough. Let's see. Next, page 9 is just your presentation of just your government funds, your governmental funds. And so probably the most important fund there to you is your general fund. General fund, again, had good cash balances, investments, which are certificates of deposits. So that's, you still have a large, and at the end you still have an unassigned positive balance of 2,583,000 in the general fund, with your subsequent year expenditures are reserved. You also have some amounts assigned to the Parks and Rec, emergency response apparatus, and the disaster contingency. This shows the presentation of what are considered all your governmental funds. Your permanent fund, still in a strong position, 3,415,000. The non-spendable portion, 3,356,000, and the spendable portion is the 59,243, which is your 1/2 of your earnings each year can be transferred to the general fund for use during this next year. So this will be the amount, the 59,000, which can be transferred to the general fund for use during the FY21. Capital projects, you have a good balance there. You have still 853,000 reserved for school major maintenance and 399,000 reserved for capital projects, other capital projects. This year, for the first time, you had the CARES Act fund, which you can see had that, you had already received the 1,685,000. So you had that in advance to spend during FY21. Page 10 is your statement of revenue. So it's like your income statement for your governmental funds. And this year you can see that the expenditures, which in the general fund do not include depreciation. So your actual expenditures were more than what your revenues that you took in, primarily because of your taxes being lower than they had been in the past. And you still had some operating transfers going to different funds, going to the capital projects, and then some going over to the enterprise funds that we'll look at. So the general fund did have a negative net change in fund balance of 696,000 this year. So in other words, it had a loss. It had expenditures in excess of revenues. The permanent investment, like I said, had 118,000 in investment earnings. Capital projects had a little bit of investment earnings. There's some interest earned, and then there was some revenues there for the CARES Act fund that you actually had some expenditures. You did spend some money that prior to June 30. The other governmental funds are your smaller funds, your emergency management grants, your mapping grant. All those are considered other governmental funds. They don't reach the threshold of being called a major fund. Page 13 shows your enterprise funds, which are your landfill, your solid waste, and your land management. There's cash and investments in there. Primarily your asset there is your, now it's the proprietary funds are based as a business. So your actual, in that case, it does show your capital assets, whereas opposed to general fund does not. It shows your capital assets, and it shows the portion of your OPEB and PERS that has been assigned to that. It's based on salaries, we allocate part of the debt for the OPEB and PERS is apportioned out to the solid waste and the land management funds. And again, both of these still have positive net position. The landfill has 362,000 and the land management has 641,000 unrestricted positive net positions. And this does show on the solid waste the estimated liability for your landfill closure of 840,000. The next page, on page 14, that is your statement of revenues and expenses. So this is your income and loss for your proprietary funds, your enterprise funds. You can see the solid waste did have a negative it had an operating loss. Not as large as in some, we have had larger losses in the past, but you can see depreciation was 158,000. So without that depreciation of 158,000, which is a no cash expense, you would have had a positive change in that position. But even after the transfer of 80,000 with all this, you do have a loss of 12,000, a small loss on the solid waste fund. The land management has a larger loss, has 144,000 this year. There's expenses there for the professional fees, your portion of the professional fees for the mapping project is basically what that is. Let's see. Pages 16 through 46 are your notes. And basically what the purpose of the notes is to describe things that can't really be seen well from your financial statements, to give more in depth of your information for your financial statements. So I'll just briefly go over some of the notes that I feel are some kind of important notes. All these notes are important, of course, but the first part is all of your policies. Kind of just it describes the borough, describes when something is a liability, when something is, what's considered an asset. Talks about that you give half of talks about the permanent fund, when it was established, that half of your income earned can be transferred to the general fund. Describes what the lives of your assets are. Talks about long-term debt. And really long-term debt, you don't really have what's considered long-term debt. Long-term debt, you have no loans and you have no bond issues. So really your long-term debt is your liability for the landfill closure, and then your responsibility for PERS and OPEB for the employees. Page 24 is a breakdown of all your cash and where you have, altogether 8,959,000 worth of cash at that point at June 30. This does not include your investments. This is just strictly your cash. So you can see your cash is spread out between, there's accounts for the major school maintenance, and just your general fund checking is still high. You've got your CARES account. At that time, you had the CARES account, checking account. So this is just a breakdown of all of your cash. And then you also have restricted funds in your landfill, cash in your landfill closure fund. Page 25 talks about your investments. Basically, your investments are mutual funds and certificates of deposit. So the general fund only has certificates of deposit. The permanent investment fund has mutual funds and certificate deposits that are allowed by your code. So, and these investments are within code for your ranges. Solid waste has a CD that is for, it has CDs. It actually has more than one. It has a CD for landfill closure. It has a certificate also for a solid waste fund equipment reserve, and also one for operations. So the solid waste has 3 CDs. Land management also has a certificate deposit for operations. And the general fund has certificates of deposit for operations. All of your funds, your cash funds, which are in the bank balance was at 8,241,000 at June 30. And all of your funds, as required by your code, all of your funds are either FDIC insured up to 250,000, and the remainder is collateralized with what's known as a tri-party agreement between your bank. Your bank has has investments in another bank, and that's called a tri-party agreement. So there's investments set aside specifically to collateralize the funds of the Denali Borough for safety purposes. Let's see. Page 27 describes what you have in capital assets. You can see what the majority of your primary governmental activities is your school buildings, with a ending value of 33 million. So that is your largest assets you have, and then you have some you have some operational equipment for the governmental activities. And then the business type activities has the various transfer stations and the landfill building and landfill equipment, which is a large part of that. This also shows the component unit, which is the school district. And there's some additional construction and process for the Anderson School roof project. So there's still some construction and process there. When that project's finished, that will also be transferred to the borough. See. On page 30, we do talk about the landfill. The latest estimate that you had last year, it's actually dated January 11th, 2019, had a total of 3 million. What they're estimating in 33 years, we have additional 33 years of life left on the landfill. And at that point, they're estimating that it will take 3,277,000 to close it. Now we know that estimate could change over time. It could increase. You also are closing some of your cells as you go. So that's an estimate of what it would cost. So what we're doing is we're increasing the landfill liability by approximately $76,000 each year to keep up with that. And as we've discussed in the past, I suggest that you try to set aside that at least that much in cash, so that at the end, you have the cash to pay for this, to pay for your landfill closure, because you have the landfill closure and then an additional 30 years. Yes, 30 years of landfill care after it's closed. So at this point, we're predicting an additional life of 33 years and then 30 years additional closure. So this is quite a distance in the future. The pages for 31 through 46 are all the information that are required by the government accounting standards boards to describe pension and OPEB liabilities. We have to show things such as the rates that come from the actuarial report, how your liability is calculated, your portion of the liability, what would happen if the interest rate went up and the interest rate went down. We're also presenting in these notes information about the school district's pension and OPEB liabilities for both PERS and TERS for the school district. On page 40, at the end of this, we talked about this year we had the mayor wrote a subsequent event note where basically he described what you've done with the CARES funds. And that was really what we decided was an event subsequent to June 30, 2020, which had a big effect on the borough. And that was your ability to distribute funds to the community to help for your response to the COVID pandemic and response in the community and for testing and all that. So we discussed that, and that you intend to have all of your, so you'll have nearly $3.8 million allocated to the borough that you intended to expend by December 30. And of course, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in this next year. So we noted that there could be some bounce back. There may not be some bounce back. So just that we noted this in your financial statements. The required supplementary section is again, is additional information that is required by government accounting standards boards that be presented. Primarily, it's information about pension and OPEB. But pages 49 and 50 are your budget to actual for your general fund. So this will shows what you had originally budgeted, what your final budget was, and then what the actual amounts were. So you adjusted, you can see at the top, you adjusted your original budget for your overnight accommodation tax was 4 million, you lowered it to 2.9, and your actual was 2.8, so you did have a slight variance there. So originally you had projected that you would have a deficit possibly of 1.3. The final budget also predicted about a deficit of 1.3 million, and your actual deficit, which you wound up because of cutting down expenses and trying to, conserve funds where they could, budget actually wound up to be 696,000 deficit. So let's see. And that is basically your financial statements. There are some more required charts for your PERS and TERS and OPEB and pension. And also at the very back, there's a presentation of the smaller funds, what we call the non-major funds, which were your emergency performance grant, your Homeland Security grants, hazard mitigation, and your legislative grant fund, which is your mapping project. So that is basically the presentation of the financial statements. We discussed the letter of internal control, which showed no findings. The other letter is our communication with governance. And in this letter, we would discuss anything else that we had, any other issues that maybe didn't reach the level of a finding, but something that we thought we should discuss. And in this case, we did not have anything that we felt that needed to be brought to your attention. The audit really actually went very well. There was a lot of cooperation from your staff, which I really appreciated because it was an unusual year for us in that due to COVID, we weren't traveling, which is unusual for us because we usually spend 2 to 3 days in your offices, and we didn't this year. So it required us to all think about how we could do this, and your staff was very willing to do. We did a lot of Zoom calls with all the staff, with all the staff except for the landfill. We did all the staff, talked to the Mayor Walker, and we just had a lot of conversations. And then there was a lot of Wendy did a very good job of sending anything that I needed electronically. So we had to kind of figure out how we would do it, but we did accomplish the audit, and I do appreciate their assistance to this. So we were able to do what we needed to do, but long distance. So this year, so I do appreciate that. Are there any questions regarding the financial statements or the results of the financial statements, or any areas to clear up?
Mayor Walker. go
I
ahead.
actually have one. Thanks. Yeah, I know. I could ask you this another time, but I did include it in my report, and I'm curious to dial in a little more on that unrestricted.
Okay.
It's actually up considerably. I did it year over year, from last year, and I wonder if that's really just the result of the CARES. And
Yes, I would
Yeah.
agree that you have, with that 1.6, you do have, you have some extra cash. There is some, you did have an increase in your capital, in your assets by that 1,090,000, which was really just, the inclusion of that roof transferred over. So, yeah, that's basically, because it wasn't, you only had your net assets actually only changed by 237,000 in your governmental activities. But it's basically because of those things. So
I'm always happy to see a healthy number in that unrestricted.
Yes.
It's definitely, in tough times, but yeah, that CARES has played a role here. So
Yeah, without your if you didn't have your forward funding, then you would have had, that, I always tell you that, if you didn't have your forward funding, which your forward funding is good, your unrestricted then would be closer to what, 8 million there. But, that is, but that's a nice little, but that you've already, you've already restricted your next year's, what you estimated at that point to be your next year's expenditures. So
Right.
that's always a good thing. We know that this next year will be tough.
It will be.
It will be. We don't exactly know where we're going to end up with the overnight accommodations tax. Everything else was about the same, your severance tax, that was all about the same. It really was just the substantial decrease in your overnight accommodations tax.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lori, for the excellent presentation, and just for the assembly in terms of, that decline, that loss in our OA. We do receive about 65% of the summer. You call the summer, of course, May through September, and the July 1st on is about 65% of the whole, and 35% in the May, June, basically. So, so we saw the smaller of the two losses in this fiscal year. In the next fiscal year, in the next audit, we're going to see that larger loss.
Yes, that's what we're
For last
assuming.
year.
We're assuming we'll probably likely see another deficit probably in our general fund. We may not. It depends on, I don't know how much you can decrease your expenses and still maintain the
Right.
service that you need, but we're expecting likely that there will be another deficit there.
Yeah. Thank you. You're right. When I said loss, I mean specific to OA revenue,
Right.
not necessarily general fund loss.
Right.
Yeah.
And the CARES fund, although it's great, the expenditures match the revenues. So in that case, you won't see an increase in the bottom line in your net assets, because it'll just, it'll just match. And next year, obviously, we'll be having a little bit more, for 21 will be a more extensive audit, because we will have to do you will qualify for a federal single audit, which your organization hasn't gone through a federal single audit for quite a few years, but you've had state single audits. And so I'm anticipating that we've talked about what needs to be done and what records need to be kept regarding this CARES fund. So it'll just be an additional part of the audit next year.
Any other questions? Well, thank you to you, and thank you to Wendy and the staff in the office for working with you guys and figuring out a way to get this done in our in the new normal environment. And yeah, glad to hear you were able to accomplish it all, and certainly appreciate the thorough report here tonight.
Okay. Thank you all.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. And with that, we'll move on to our own slew of reports. And first up is our November finance report. And does it look like, did Mr. Stenger?
Yes, I wanted to
join us?
interrupt and say I finally made it.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll have the minutes reflect here that you joined us. And I see Ms. Simon joined us as well. Did you have any public comment that you wanted to make? We did close that, but we said we'd open up if other folks wanted to speak with us. So.
Oh, thanks so much. No, I don't have comments tonight.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us. So the finance report. Is there a motion to receive?
I'll move to receive the November 2020 financial report as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Zapone to receive the finance report. Seconded. Any discussion? Any opposition to receiving the report? Call that unanimous and move on to Planning Commission report. I don't see any planning commissioners on the call, but did you have anything in that regard, Mayor Walker?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to update you that the last time they met was December 2nd. I think we talked about that at our December assembly meeting. The training that was provided at that meeting, that work session, and the January meeting has been canceled, and the February meeting is being planned to present and engage a tabletop exercise and further training on working through a conditional use permit, the new conditional use permit system that we established. So looking forward to more training in February for the Planning Commission.
Great. Certainly appreciate getting getting ahead of the curve on that one, and not learning something like that totally on the fly. So I'm glad to see some of those things are getting worked on. I think, and I'm sure the first applicant for that special use permit will appreciate it as well when the time comes. And emergency manager report. I believe we have Mr. Knoll with us.
Good evening, Assembly members. I do have a report, and I apologize for not getting this to you in advance in writing. I'll work to change that. But for now, I will summarize what I've got, and then it'll get sent later for the minutes. I wanted to start by expressing a bit of gratitude for local EMS personnel from Denali National Park. They've been providing mutual aid to Tri-Valley Volunteer Fire Department while vaccinations have been administered. And so during those times, we're actually staffed up with EMS personnel in the Healy area in case somebody has a bad reaction or in case Tri-Valley gets another call and has to leave. So appreciate them and all that they've done there. Testing continues. I don't have December numbers for you. But at the moment, the case rate for the other interior region of Alaska, which encompasses the Denali Borough, is 24.37 per 100,000. The threshold for high risk is 10 per 100,000. So that indicates why we, in our last press release on Thursday, we indicated we still are in a high risk environment because in our area of the state, the case rate is still high. We have had 2 new cases show up on our dashboard in the last 7 days. So while we're seeing some lower numbers and we had a bit of a streak there with no positive cases, we are, the risk is still out there. We want to continue to keep up the mitigation, keep our bubble small, wear masks, frequently, and wash those hands. The other thing I wanted to touch on is that this testing really is to identify where the virus is and to isolate it, to allow us to know, give us the information to know we need to follow that public health guidance, and it's not to spread shame or anything like that. So I wanted to make note of that. We're excited to announce changes to the testing hours. So starting next Monday, thanks to our increased staffing, we're able to provide testing we'll be testing in Cantwell Monday from 1 to 2 and Anderson from 1 to 2 on Wednesday. And so those are the big changes. We're offering testing on site at the schools Monday in Cantwell, Wednesday in Anderson. These will all be posted widely, by the way. And then Monday and Wednesday evenings from 4:30 to 6:30 in Healy at the testing trailer, we'll be testing. Tuesday and Thursday, we will be testing at the trailer for a reduced amount of time, 9 to 11 a.m. We'll keep looking at demand, and as demand fluctuates, we'll try to match our testing availability to demand. And we do know we're doing the right thing in making testing widely available, low barrier, and trying to test aggressively to be able to identify where the virus is. I wanted to provide a vaccine update. Cantwell and Interior Health Center Clinic have been dispensing vaccine since our last meeting, so that's exciting news. Vaccines arriving in the state via 3 avenues. We've got the allocation to the state, allocation through Indian Health Services, and allocation through the Department of Defense. I know that we've heard, and I've heard it on a number of calls, that there's been frustration with the registration process. So I hear that, and I say ask people to continue to be patient. We will get more vaccine into the state, and that will get out and become available through appointments just as soon as it can be. So as we get more vaccine in the state, more appointments will open up, and as more providers enroll, we will have wider availability. Locally, we've got Interior Community Health Center and also the Cantwell Clinic are able to vaccinate. So I'd encourage folks to call either one of those places and to get on the waiting list. My understanding is currently all their spots are booked, but get on the waiting list. They'll get you next in line. A reminder, both vaccines that are available in Alaska require 2 doses. Those doses have to be taken almost exactly 1 month apart, varies depending on which vaccine. So you have to get both doses in the same location. And so we're seeing a lot of availability in Fairbanks. At the Carlson Center, they're doing a mass point of dispensing clinic. At places like Fred Meyer, Costco, spots are opening up. And so just be aware, if you do choose to get a vaccine in another community, plan to get that second dose in the same community. And I just wanted to highlight our January allocation from the state was 100 doses, and that's very comparable to the statewide allocation. And so we know as the state gets more, we'll see more locally as well. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knoll. Any questions for the emergency manager? Okay, if not, move on to school district report, and we have Superintendent Polta here tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you again tonight. I'll start off with some appreciations and thank yous. And the first thing is just I really have a lot of appreciation for everybody locally and statewide that's really adhered to those mitigation guidelines. And we see those real drop in case numbers across the state and locally. And when you sit down and hear anything on the national news, it just seems like such an anomaly compared to how the virus is progressing in the rest of the country. So please reflect on that and think, hey, let's continue this. Those low case numbers allowed the schools to actually transition to our medium risk level and bring our students back into the building this week. We'd like to be able to keep them there through, all the way through the end of this school year and be with them each and every day. So thank you, and keep that in mind. This year, in late November, actually, I think it was December, we got word of our students that qualified for the all-state choir. While the event isn't happening, we did have 5 people qualified for that event, and that was Cami Vandeventer, Tegan Suko, Kimberly Gardner, Paige Scholes, and Rosemary Smith. And an interesting kind of other thing, kind of like this weird thing of COVID, Holland America Princess opened up an email account that they don't really monitor too much in the wintertime. And they realized they'd never awarded their scholarship that they give to the graduates of the Denali Borough. So they reached out to us, got the information that was necessary, and issued scholarships for 5 of our graduates last year. And they are Abby Smith, Aaron Shabilsky, Missy Titus, Kenzie Mirasol, and Rebecca Basil. Also wanted to give a thanks to the Borough Assembly and Mayor Walker. He came over to the office the other day and delivered the 3rd and final tranche of funds from the borough to the school district this year. And it was just under $1 million, representing that required local contribution. Really appreciate that. It really provides for a level of service for the students in our community that far surpasses that level of service that other communities have. Also want to kind of close the appreciations and thoughts with something on a bit sadder news. And it's just really that the thoughts and prayers of the school district go out to the Cashinamute School District in the community of Chivac. That community has been pretty ravaged by the virus, and this weekend their superintendent, Dave Uji, passed away as a result of his infection with COVID-19. And so I say that just as a reminder that the virus is still present in our communities and in the state, and it's very real, devastating communities, families, and individuals as well. On some financial information, in terms of some status that we have on the school district, this month we are looking at the second reading of our FY22 budget, and it's at this point unchanged from our draft that we looked at in December. We are doing some final updates, updating our maintenance and technology plans, which will change kind of that projected deficit a little bit, but probably not very much. Right now, we are projecting an operational deficit of a little bit over $100,000, which is very comfortable in terms of covering with our unrestricted carryover. We also are working on a stress test and kind of saying, well, what are some scenarios, and just in terms of revenue scenarios that we might face, and to be able to see, well, how comfortable would we be if that were to come to pass? And we settled on asking the question, well, what if no additional students like return to our brick and mortar schools? Like use our current projections that we have for peak, but let's say like worst case scenario, nobody comes back in from homeschooling. And then we said, okay, if we find that out and then just basically go, well, what if 25% come back and 50% and then 75%? Because that'll just give us like an easy way to say, okay, we have the reserves that if that happens in the fall, we'd be comfortable absorbing that shock or making adjustments next year. And at this point, the calculations that we have is that if the exact same brick and mortar enrollment happens next year, we'd have a shortfall in revenue of about $1 million versus what we're projecting right now. And that'd be tight, but doable. And then I'd say, again, that's a very unlikely scenario. And so we think of those other scenarios and they become progressively more comfortable, but it starts to kind of give us a little bit better picture of like, okay, rather than kind of wondering what if nothing changes and we can't get back in, gives us that picture to say, okay, well, how can we start managing this? Or just the kind of thoughts in the background to be able to see how comfortable we'd be. Right. The other information that we just got out in the additional relief bill that passed the federal Congress and was signed into law, there are additional funds that will be coming to school districts. It looked like a larger amount than was received in the earlier CARES Act relief. And we're still waiting for kind of like the formal guidance from the Department of Education in terms of how much that allocation will be per school district, what are the specific things that it can be used for, what's the time frame for that use. So again, that's going to have kind of ramifications both for the current year and then possibly some impact onto carryover funds, which could again impact our comfort with any projected revenue and enrollment decreases. With some facilities updates, last month we did complete the repair work on the Anderson roof project with the heat, that excess heat that was escaping out of the boiler room and causing the melt. Those repairs were completed. We've been monitoring the roof, and I'd say that the snow is still on top of the roof. It's not melting and turning into ice and pooling. So that's a very good sign. So now we're going to keep monitoring it. And it's like, we want a bit more snow up there to get on the roof. We kind of want some really cold temperatures to have like that real amount of excess heat trying to get out of there to kind of, stress test the roof. But at this point, we're very pleased with the repairs that were done. The day before, switching to Tri-Valley, the day before the winter break, we were running a regular monthly test on the backup generator, and it arced and stopped working, like completely just shut down. And we're like, okay, it's wintertime. We don't have a backup generator. The building will freeze pretty quickly without that because we can't run circulating pumps to get heat moving through the building. We immediately were able to contact a company in Fairbanks, and the next day we were able to install a portable rental generator that we just have there as a backup. Usabelli was able to send somebody over and take a look at the generator. They couldn't identify what was wrong with it. Yesterday, we were able to get a technician down from NCCAT, and he looked at it and said, okay, the control board blew. There was no other damage from the arc. Gave us a quote on the replacing the control board. It's very reasonable, $7,000. So we've moved forward with processing that work order already and hope to have our generator back online as soon as possible. And those are the items that I wanted to share with you this month. And if there are any questions, I would entertain those. And if not, I'll watch the rest of the meeting on YouTube.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Polta. Enjoy the rest of the show.
You're welcome. Have fun.
And with that, move on to the mayor's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yeah, you had a written report that was emailed to you, and and we do post these on our website for the public as well. And starting off with that COVID testing program expansion of offerings, the new hours, and happy to have the new staff members, EMTs, Jess Tubman and Tara Chicatello, who are helping with that effort and working with the school district to bring some of the testing down to Cantwell and Anderson as well. The testing program all along has been paid for through federal CARES funding, and we do have some remainder of that CARES funding. We're also investigating and keeping an eye on and listening for opportunities for that the new Appropriations Act, which provided a lot of new COVID relief specific. It had a designated area specific to testing and vaccine delivery, and we're hopeful that we'll have a way to access that. Right now, we don't see that, but we do see the possibility of FEMA reimbursement for these eligible expenses under the Public Assistance Program. And today we participated in a bit of a training work session on that with a couple FEMA representatives. It would be our first FEMA application and project and reimbursement. It's a considerable grant lift, unlike any other that we've ever done, and definitely a learning curve, and definitely not for the faint of heart. But we think it'd be valuable and worthwhile, and we understand that we need to be patient in working with FEMA. But we're going to start that process. And moving on to the vaccination update, Chris gave you a lot of that information, how Tier 1 of Phase 1A is now open to all citizens 65 and older. And we are providing both COVID and vaccine updates in those weekly updates. I did just do a recent Mondays with the mayor, just getting that information out there. And a lot of good information is on the state website as well. And really kudos to all those who are working together to make that service delivery happen. Back to that Federal Relief Act, the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which did not provide additional relief for impacted state and local governments, but did extend the deadline of the previously appropriated CARES funding. And so for municipalities like the Denali Borough, who plan to expend most all of their CARES funding, it was of limited consequence. But at the same time, we do have a little remainder that will be helpful. And we informed the nonprofit recipients of that extension of the usage of these monies. And we'll continue to track and report our expenditures through the coming months. All those reports will continue. And the remaining CARES balance is under 100,000 and will be used for necessary and allowable COVID-related expenses through the coming year, which we anticipate will supersede that remainder. So we do remain hopeful that federal relief, which can be used to address not only additional COVID related expenses, but also to address lost revenue. That was very much discussed in Congress, the actual lost revenue piece. And so we'll continue to advocate for that. And moving forward into a new year. This new year did bring new revenue, new taxes that the borough had, the Borough Assembly played in, bringing those to the voters, and the voters did approve those new taxes in November of 19, and January 1st was the day to implement a 5% tax on the sale of alcohol and marijuana. And all purveyors in those businesses at this time have registered with the borough. And additionally, the overnight accommodations tax rate did rise from 7 to 7.5% on January 1st. You'll see some of those in the fee schedule on your agenda later. Then to the fiscal year 2020 audited financial statements. Really thank Lori for the tremendous work she has done for a lot of years for us, for the borough, and does a great job. Hope you appreciated her presentation. I sure did. And really want to thank the finance team here, Wendy, our treasurer, Connie in accounts payable, Sherry in accounts receivable, for the bang up job to have a clean audit, no findings. They do a fantastic job. And so just in terms of, in general, when the crisis hit and the big downturn in revenue, we talked about relying upon our strong financial foundation with the 3 pillars of forward funding. So helpful. It's so critical right now to be forward funded. That healthy, unrestricted fund balance and very little debt. And you see that continue in the financial statement. And we, with bigger losses being bigger overnight accommodations tax losses being realized in the current fiscal year, we will be needing to lean upon that strong foundation. An update on the community mapping project. That's that partnership with the state. It is near the finish line, and the maps look great. We've had a chance to review them. The boroughs reviewed them, the states reviewed them. Aerial imagery of our communities. There's lots of information on those maps. And the contractor is finalizing the maps, and we expect to take delivery of those finished products in early February, maybe even late January. We'll have a link on our webpage, but to host those maps on a website, it's quite large files and a big Esri system for that. So the state does that on their website. So we'll have a link to that, as well as a number of hard copies. We do think they'll be valuable going forward. Wanted to let you know about a development. The McKinley Village community did spearhead an effort through the fire department, through the volunteer fire department, to develop a CWPP. That's a community wildfire protection plan. We've talked about these over the years. When I first heard about them, and forestry was advocating for those in communities, we said it would be great if local areas could develop those plans, and the borough would help support. Anderson was the first. The city of Anderson completed their CWPP a couple years ago, and it can open up funding for mitigation projects, which the city of Anderson is really going to benefit from. That project is underway to create some really good fire breaks there in Anderson, and so McKinley Village is working through it. They have their plan has been locally reviewed and has been sent to forestry, so it's in progress. Wanted to give you a heads up on the legislative session that begins the 19th. We do have a couple of resolutions to the session this evening on your agenda. Neither the House nor the Senate have organized at this time around principles or selected their leadership. The Senate is I think likely to organize soon. The House could take longer, hopefully not a month into session like last year. And advocacy, like everything else, will be different this year with the Capitol building being closed. And advocacy will be via phone, email, video chats. The annual Alaska Municipal League Conference, the fly-in in February, will be virtual. And and like the virtual November meeting, it seems to grow in days. So AML, Alaska Municipal League, has a lot of advocacy planned, and and a lot of good communication. If you're interested in receiving those and are not, there will be weekly legislative updates produced through Alaska Municipal League. Just let me know if you'd like to be included on that AML listserv. They are very active in putting a lot out. There are a couple little updates that aren't on the written report I wanted to let you know about. The addressing, an addressing update. You know, we said that one of the first steps is really for the street naming piece. Can't give an address if you don't have a street name, right? And we know there are a lot of unnamed roads in the borough, and we know there are a lot of roads that don't meet the street naming standards that the assembly passed. So we've been working on that piece, developing a spreadsheet of actually, guess how many roads there are in the borough. I wouldn't have guessed this number. It's a lot higher than I would have thought. 391 roads are on our spreadsheet. So Marcia and Sherry have been doing a great job, and Marcia's drafted 26 different maps illustrating these different roads, and preparing for the next step of public review of those street names and potential changes. Also did want to let you know that that a liquor license transfer to Vitus Energy in Cantwell that received a non-protest from the Denali Borough did receive a protest from the native village of Cantwell, and they let me know that they thought that that was not in the best interest of the community. They had concerns, and brought that forward to the alcohol board, and I did listen to their consideration of that. There's some other extenuating circumstances with that potential transfer, but I did want to let you know that the native village of Cantwell did file a protest for that transfer of liquor license, and that's what I've got for you this evening, and be happy to take any questions you might have.
Anything from Mayor Walker? Thank you for your report.
You bet.
We'll move on to assembly comments and start up with C-Day with Mr. Kennelly.
Yes, thank you. Congratulations, Mayor Walker and the entire borough staff, especially the finance department, on a clean audit. That was great to hear and see that. Read through the report. Looked like very well conducted, professional. So appreciate that. And of course, all the hard work by borough staff and the thoroughness of reports. Continue to be impressed by that. Thank you.
Mr. Hill isn't here. Move on, Mr. Shreve.
Nothing right now.
Ms. Minor.
I just echo that reports are great, and especially congratulations on the clean audit. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. So thanks for the staff and Wendy and all those others that participate in that. And thanks to Lori for coming on and explaining it to us all. I'm not super great with all of that, but I appreciated that. So yeah.
Mr. Chatfield isn't here, but go to Ms. Apone.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring up, there is a guy here in Anderson that has started up a podcast just to get information out, and it's called The Pulse in Anderson and Nenana, and it's on Podbean, and he's more than willing to announce anything that you feel like you would want announced, and you can contact him through The Pulse.
Thank you. Ms. Apone.
Yeah, hi. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for the reports as always. And it's nice that Mrs. Geek comes to us every year, because this is my 6th or 7th time actually receiving this presentation from her. So don't be discouraged, Ms. Minor, because it does make more sense with practice. I'm always so proud of where we are financially as a borough, and I know that Ms. Holmes and the original charter group, it has a great due of thanks to them. Yeah, other than that, I look forward to the rest of this meeting, and I'm going to save my other comments till the end.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to echo thanks for everybody again for all the financial work and great reports and yeah, the work that we have been able to do, making that testing widely available. I think it serves the community well. So I appreciate all the work that yeah, borough staff is putting into kind of doing our part out here with limited resources throughout the pandemic. And Mr. Stenger.
Yeah, thanks. Just echo everybody else's comments. The borough staff and the mayor doing a fantastic job there, getting everything out there. Lee's side too is kind of the annual financial report. Lori, that was a heck of a job putting that out. I was a little overwhelmed with all the information, but I figured it out. Apologize for starting late. I too had a generator problem, and I'll save the rest of the comments. Exceptional report, so Dan, Chris, Mayor, thanks.
Okay, with that, move on to draft ordinances. And we have ordinance 21-01, an allocation from the Solid Waste Equipment Reserve Fund.
I will move to introduce ordinance 21-01.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Sabone to introduce, and it's been seconded. Mayor Walker, what do you know about this one?
Thank you. The Assembly has wrestled with some pretty big topics and some pretty big ordinances of late. So we thought we'd start ordinance 2101, the first one of the year. Nice, simple, straightforward. Let's buy some tires. And and it is the landfill loader, the 966 loader, which some pretty big, pretty expensive tires, which need replacement. The landfill environment is tough on tires, and these are the ones that we plan to propose to purchase are specifically rated for the landfill environment. And in total, all four of them do cost $21,000. And we could come about this a couple different ways. One would be to amend the the budget and the line item of repairs and maintenance upward to account for that expense. We do have older equipment there, and we do have, you know, it does take it. We plan on using what we have in repairs and maintenance to maintain our older equipment at the landfill. So we have a strategy to go ahead and utilize a different pot of money, the Solid Waste Equipment Reserve Fund, which currently stands at $366,000. And we do have hopes for that money, and we do hope to acquire a new dozer. But right now, it is the tires on the loader that take precedent. And so we'd like to allocate $21,000 from that fund to this purpose. That's what it is.
Any questions from Mayor Walker or a discussion of the draft ordinance? Mr. Denali.
Yes, thanks. Mayor Walker, what's the existing remaining life on the tires of the loader right now?
They're in need of replacement. If Scott, our operations manager, were here, he could maybe give you a little more detailed answer on that. And I could get back to you on that, but we've known this has been an issue for a while, and we think this is the time. We know it needs to be addressed, and we think this is the time.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Bone.
First of all, I want to remind everybody that this is the Equipment Reserve Fund out of the self-sustaining entity that is our solid waste account items. It's in the budget. So just to make sure that it's not something we're pulling out of the general fund, this is something we've saved up for and potentially, well, actually, hypothetically, we were going to be driving around in a brand new piece of equipment this year, but we decided not to buy that with the expected impact. So I guess we could buy these guys a nice shiny new set of tires, because that does always put a smile on an operator's face. So it's not the brand new D8 we were looking at, but it is a nice new shiny set of tires for these guys, and they work hard for it. And I think it's a valuable expense for prolonging the life of that loader.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you. And I'll also note that repair costs are expensive to have. It's usually GCR tire come down to repair these large tires. It's expensive. So they are at the end of their life, and it is a needed expenditure.
If there's no other discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote on introduction of ordinance 20-01.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Jeff Stinger,
Yes.
Krista Zapone,
Yes.
Talon Shreve,
Yes.
Dominic Kennelly,
Yes.
Eileen Holmes,
Yes.
Jared Zimmerman,
Yes.
unanimous for introduction.
Is there a motion to postpone to the next meeting?
I will move to postpone ordinance 21-01 to the next regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Zabon to postpone. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to postponing to the next meeting? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. And we'll move on to resolutions. And we have resolution 21-01. Denali Borough 2021 legislative priorities.
I will move to introduce resolution number 21-01.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Zapone to, I guess we could say approve the resolution.
Yes, that's what I meant to move to approve.
All right.
21-01.
And it's been seconded. Mayor Walker?
Yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to kind of walk us through priority resolution for this coming legislative session. The first whereas and the first priority is one that we've shared for many years, and that is the Community Assistance Program. It's important to the Denali Borough. It's important to the city of Anderson. It has declined in terms of what the state has contributed over the years, and it is essential for many municipalities, including the Denali Borough. It was not fully recapitalized, and further, and if it's not buttressed, it'll continue in further erosion of the disbursement, which is a third of what's in the fund gets dispersed each year. So as the fund shrinks, that third shrinks. So we want to encourage the legislature to value the community assistance program and to recapitalize the fund. Another area that the borough has supported for many years is holding the line on the PERS contribution rate. That's that maintaining that agreement from 2008, in which we agreed, all municipalities, to a 22% employer contribution cap for the public employee retirement system, PERS, and a 12.5 cap for TERS. And maintaining that agreement is important. We know there's been efforts to increase the local contribution beyond what we agreed to. And that kind of speaks to the last one. Without the last one, there continue to be erosion in community assistance program, continue to be runs at piling more on the municipalities, especially in terms of the retirement system. But so many other things too, if the state doesn't get its fiscal house in order. So our third big point is the deterioration of the state's fiscal condition threatens the state's ability to meet its constitutional obligations to education, public safety, and public health. And we need a reliable and fiscally sound partner in these shared responsibilities, such as major school maintenance. We have another resolution to that. But even with the reformed or lesser PFD payment, the state budget projects $1 billion annual deficit. So we request the legislature favorably consider recapitalizing the Community Assistance Fund to its full $60 million to ensure future payouts, opposing efforts to increase the non-state employer contributions to the PERS-TERS system, opposing cost shifts to the municipalities, which we're hearing are being contemplated. We may well be talking about some new and different types of cost shifts than we've contemplated before that are being proposed. Supporting a balanced approach to resolving the state's continuing budget deficits and taking measurable steps towards a sustainable fiscal plan for a healthy Alaskan future.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor Walker? Any discussion on the resolution? If there's no discussion, I would ask for a roll call vote on approval, please.
Jeff Stanger,
Yes.
Talon Shreve,
Yes.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Eileen Holmes,
Yes.
Dominic Kennelly,
Yes.
Krista Zappone,
Yes.
Jared Zimmerman,
Yes.
unanimous.
All right, the resolution is approved. And that'll bring us to Resolution 21-02, a resolution of the Denali Borough Assembly supporting the state of Alaska participating as a full partner in its public school system for major maintenance projects.
I will move to approve resolution 21-02.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zappone to approve, and it's been seconded. Mayor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll let you know that if this one is approved as well, these will be brought to the governor. These will be brought to our legislators and others. And that major maintenance piece is referenced in the first one, but there's so much meat on that bone. I thought it was reasonable to speak to that topic as a standalone topic. It is the state's constitutional duty to maintain a system of public schools. And one could argue that the maintenance of these schools is wholly their responsibility, and that that can be argued and, might go to the court system someday. But currently we do have a partnership agreement, and there's a good program called the Capital Improvements Projects, Major Maintenance Capital Improvement Projects, and their Major Maintenance Grant Fund that's been honed over all these years. And, really well-established program. It identifies, scores, and ranks capital projects in our K through 12 schools. And the projects that you've seen over the years, from the Cantwell roof to the Cantwell sprinkler system, the Tri-Valley roof, and well, the Anderson roof's next. But all these projects have been part of that program, and that program has not been funded. That they have not been. They've not been a partner in these projects. And, the borough, we state that we have a strong working partnership with the school district to provide that local contribution, that portion of the project. And we have the local expertise needed to manage these projects. And the Anderson roof is number 6 on the list. If they do commit, I think it's over 40 million takes us down to number 6. That project would be funded. But the total list of this, the total fund priority list includes 108 projects across the state, with a total of $187 million in need out there. And our schools are old. They're all over 40 years, and they need maintenance projects, major maintenance projects, and we need the state to be a partner here. So we ask that the legislature appropriate sufficient funds to account for the state's share of major maintenance needs in our K through 12 system. And there's talk of a lawsuit out there. I mean, if they continue to not be a partner in this, I think it's worth pushing on.
And there was a lawsuit, I was gonna say, a year ago, 2 years ago, that was resolved, but they decided not to dig too deeply into that question of whether it's solely the state's responsibility or not. Is that right?
That's right, Mr. Chairman. You remember KPB, Ketchikan, KGB, Ketchikan Gateway Borough versus the state. And you remember that we considered being an amicus to that suit. And and that suit was not specific to major maintenance responsibilities. That was broad. That was does the locality have a responsibility to that required local contribution? That spoke to the required local contribution. That spoke to the $1 million check that I brought to Mr. Polta yesterday. That was our required local contribution. And and yeah, the ruling on that was rather narrow, and it did leave open the bigger question of whether that required local contribution is legal, where there are places in the state that don't provide that and others that do, such as this organized borough. Do you remember our council's advice at that time when we considered whether we're going to be an amicus? Join in that lawsuit?
What did he say?
He said, it really comes down to who you'd rather dance with, the devil you know or the devil you don't know. The system that we have in place, we know, we understand, we're capable of fulfilling our responsibilities within it. If it's a totally different system, it could look totally different in terms of our responsibilities.
Yeah, and our ability to
meet
those. Our ability to supplement.
Right. Right.
That we have situation we're in here, or have been anyway.
Yeah. But this devil we know, this maintenance program for schools is a good program. It just needs to be funded.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, this year is kind of proving how importance public school buildings are to maintaining a system of public schools. And certainly if they're falling apart or closed for other reasons, we see that impact firsthand this year. So, thanks for bringing this one to us. Discussion on resolution 2102. Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote on approval.
Eileen Holmes,
Yes.
Krista Zapone,
Yes.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Jeff Stanger,
Yes.
Talon Shreve,
Yes.
Dominic Canali,
Yes.
Jared Zimmerman.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Resolution is approved. That brings us to resolution number 2103, a resolution to approve the Denali Borough Emergency Operations Plan update.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Ms. Holmes to adopt resolution 2103, and it's been seconded. Mayor Walker, you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, thanks for your consideration here. Our original emergency operation plan was drafted in 2007, and it's had some small updates along the way, but this is the first big revision, and certainly due. And we're happy to have some Homeland Security monies to help support that effort. And we were pleased with the contractor's effort and product and opportunity for local input. It was strong, and many of those recommended changes were implemented. And the whole document is pretty big. We had a link for it. It's over 200 pages. And once you approve it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a static document. It is a living document. It's our document, and we can make changes that we think are valuable as we go forward with it.
Go ahead.
I just want to maybe mention that the first, there were a number of changes. One is that the original plan didn't foresee an emergency, a public health emergency of a pandemic. And a pandemic is definitely listed in the new emergency operations plan.
Ms. Zapone.
Just wanted to put it out there verbally for everybody listening from home or to anybody here tonight, but it does say here that we will be reviewing this plan no less than every 5 years, which I believe is a newer item for this. And I'm just wanted to say thank you for those, Mr. Knoll and Mr. Walker, for putting that in there, because 2007 to 2021 now, as it's finally finished, it's probably a little bit long for an emergency plan.
Any other discussion? If not, ask for a roll call vote for approval.
Talon Shreve,
Yes.
Dominic Canali,
Yes.
Eileen Holmes,
Yes.
Krista Zapone,
Yes.
Jeff Stanger,
Yes.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Jared Zimmerman.
Yes.
Passed unanimously.
All right, the resolution is approved. That brings us to other business, and we have an update to our fee schedule on our table. Mayor Walker, you want to highlight any changes here?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was mainly prompted by the new taxes effective January 1st. Got to get those into the fee schedule. And while we're in there, we took care of a couple other changes. So let's go, let's see, page 2, page 3, no changes, page 4. This is including a change that we actually passed in code when we passed the new OA code not that long ago. So let's get it in the fee schedule. And then of course the addition of alcohol, marijuana tax. And then finally on page 6, there's a little change that's kind of been waiting for when we were going to get into this document. And that's amending the cost per ton to dump clean coal ash at the Denali Borough landfill. It's been $14 a ton for a lot of years. And this change doesn't really nominally, discourage people from bringing it. It just moves to $15 a ton. And the main reason for this is that you don't get a bunch of pennies changing hands. The $14 a ton resulted in all sorts of odd numbers, and the $15 a ton is going to result in good, clean, till for the for the landfill. And that was the main reason for that one, both for the customers, frankly, and for the cashier there, or gatekeeper.
All right, is there a motion to approve the updated fee schedule?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, Mr. Canali has moved to approve the updated fee schedule and has been seconded. Any discussion on approval? Ms. Zapone?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to, I guess, ask a question for myself, to be honest with you. On page 5, chapter 4.11, boroughs, land permits, licenses, and easements. We have a commercial use permit here for $5 per vehicle or per horse. I was just wondering if we could maybe get a little bit more explanation on how that's collected, if that's appropriate.
That has, yeah, sure. And that could be its own topic for another meeting too. As this line does need more work. It has not been implemented as, well, it goes back to the land management plans. We didn't have the land management plans, and we actually haven't issued the commercial use permits to be collecting these fees. We've identified the fees, but we've been working through the process to be ready to actually issue those permits and collect that fee. So more work on that one.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that real quick. I'll have some follow-up for in between meetings here, but.
Sure. Good.
And I guess that does get at Mr. and Mrs. Govan's question in their public comments, but is there any updates from I know we do like an annual work plan, or now that we have kind of approved those general management plan for those areas, but do you or the planning staff kind of have a vision in terms of how we want to tackle, I guess, either that area specifically or just kind of recreation management on borough lands as a whole? Nope, and you're muted, Mayor Walker.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, I think we are to that next stage now that we have approved our land management plans and ready to move forward in engaging those commercial users as well. So yeah, as I said, kind of more work ahead on that, and be happy to maybe put it on think about what that next process is in terms of if these, be happy to talk about it and think about if the assembly approved this, and also those commercial use permits are in code as well. So we'll need to define those areas and those users.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion on the fee schedule? If not, anyone opposed to updating the fee schedule as proposed here? Hearing none, I'll call that unanimous. And that'll bring us to appointing planning seat commissioners. And I guess Mayor Walker, if you'd like to bring forward some appointments, and then we would just have a motion to confirm after that. Is that right?
That sounds good. Yes, it is. The mayor appoints, the assembly confirms. So yeah, I appreciate your consideration of these two appointments. Each January we do appoint, well, 3 seats come vacant, just like the assembly, 3 seats every year on a 9-person body, 3-year terms. And really happy to have continued interest from these long-serving individuals. From seat A, Lee Lightfoot from Cantwell has served the Planning Commission very well for a number of years, and he does serve as the deputy presiding officer of the Planning Commission. And then seat E, Baxter Mercer, who has served the borough in so many ways over so many years. I'm really happy to have his continued service and interest on the Planning Commission. He really does have a great wealth of experience and knowledge of the land here, and he's really valuable on the commission. So appreciate your consideration of confirmation of those two. I do continue to seek a northern seat. It is an 8-person body right now. We do have one member from the northern district who serves very well, but we need one more interested person to serve on the Planning Commission from the northern part of the borough for seat I.
Is there a motion to confirm the appointments?
I will move to confirm seat A with Mr. Lee Lightfoot and seat E with Baxter Mercer.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Zapone to confirm the appointments. As submitted by the mayor and has been seconded. Any discussion on the confirmation? Anyone opposed to confirming the appointment of Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Mercer? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. I did have one question in that regard. I know our allocation of seats here on the assembly is in code or charter. I'm not sure if such is the case for the school board as well. Personally, I think there's more of a compelling reason to maintain the seat allocation, kind of by area, because we do have different brick and mortar schools across the board, across the borough, but we certainly have a harder time filling planning commission seats, and there's been more vacancies there than we've had on other bodies. But if it's worth having the discussion, if we would want to reduce that number, get rid of districts and just have a 7-member or a 5-member body appointed by the mayor. I think if the mayor feels like we need representation from different parts of the borough, we can certainly handle that through the appointments, and certainly with the consent of the assembly kind of provides for that as well. If there's an area that seems like they're, being disenfranchised or not being heard or whatever it is. But that'd be something if it seems worth consideration, maybe have the planning commission weigh in on something like that. Or ask you, Mayor Walker, just to give that some thought. I know we've talked about it, across all the governing bodies here to kind of reduce that workload on our community. But if that's some low hanging fruit, or if it doesn't, it doesn't happen, as a whole, potentially streamline some things there, or just make it easier to have a full quorum.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure how low hanging that fruit is, but it is something that we've looked at. I did do a comparison to other municipalities and how we are very well represented in terms of, about a community of over 1,800 people and 9 person on each body. Each person's representing about 200 people, which is a real strong or I guess low ratio and quite different than a lot of other municipalities. And yeah, it is in code, and I don't believe the Planning Commission, I don't believe that piece is in charter, but it's definitely in code that it mirrors the assembly. And when I did that review of the other boroughs, and it really is we are an anomaly. Big Matsu, everything they've got going on down there, all the people and all the planning, they've got 5 people on their planning commission. We've got 9. It's and some people have, when we talk also about the assembly too, and the school board for that matter, and some have said, well, we're also pretty highly functioning, frankly, comparatively, and maybe that's plays a role and has played a role all these years, that we do ask a fair amount of our people and involvement, and then your average citizen does have probably know somebody on one of these boards, or maybe a couple people, and has those people to go to, and maybe it has made us better all these years, and maybe we should look at changes kind of carefully. But yeah, I'd say the Planning Commission would be, of the 3, the one that I would point to also in terms of maybe bringing that number down, and maybe going by, I mean, it's tough to not go by districts then once you bring it down, right? There's really no other way to apportion those areas. And then it is incumbent upon the mayor, the appointee, and the confirmation body, the assembly, to not stack it in one area. So those are some considerations there, but it's definitely worth considering.
Yeah, I know we've had that conversation with the school board in the past, but
Yeah.
it is an issue with the Planning Commission as well, for sure.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, Mr. Stenger, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to have representation from all the districts. Even, I mean, we've always had a problem getting representation from this northern area, and especially the Planning Commission. But each part of our borough has different needs, wants, represents totally different lifestyles. You have a lot of people up here that live off the grid, and dynamics to just be a part, I know, for some of the Kobe area residents is a factor. I'll put out the word a little bit more and try and drum up some interest. I thought I had somebody that was going to put his name in, but I guess that didn't happen. But I do think it is important to keep representation from all districts. Like I said, if you just have the main body or population wouldn't have the same wants, needs, or representation as the outlying committees, communities out there, even in Ferry or up here in Kobe and the northern parts. But I will do my best to find somebody for that area or for that spot.
Ms. Holmes.
Yeah, my feeling about that is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, Ms. Zapone.
Ms. Holmes took the words right out of my mouth, but I just wanted to recall, we did do a work session with all 3 of the entities at one point, and taking Corona year into consideration, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago now, but we were at the chamber building, and it was a big long meeting with everybody there, and the consensus of those people, which are probably still the same representatives that are currently serving, is they didn't want to change it. I think it works. We're setting an example of maybe smaller and leaner isn't necessarily better, even if it is more cost effective. But I would agree that if we took the representation piece out of the Northern District, we would see a lot more of those Kobe Road folks again, just in protest of that. So we are a very diverse borough, and we need to at least have the opportunity for them to find representation for themselves. And not to pick on Kobe Road, but Cantwell too. Mr. Canali, thank you for stepping up again.
Sure.
It's just, you know, we got to represent everybody.
Mhm. All right. Move on to public comments.
I have none.
No, I don't have any.
All right. There's no public comments. Move on to assembly comments. Start with seat I, Mrs. Holmes.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for hanging with us tonight. It was a nice, quick, fast meeting tonight. And like I said at the first of the meeting, it's always the reports that are the highlight of the meeting. And that included Ms. Geik and everybody who takes the time to make a report and comes to present it. Thank you.
Mr. Stenger.
Yeah, once again, just feels real good to be a part of this. A lot of respect for everybody here, especially for the borough staff. Amber, great job. Chris, super. The mayor, and all the people working on this COVID team and getting the shots out. I think we're doing pretty good there. Once again, super good job with the school board and the superintendent, and that's about it.
All right. Yeah. Thank you everybody for coming. I do want to take time again to thank all the borough staff and all of the elections people that worked back in November to manage that and count all the votes and do that stuff. I know all the craziness that's been going on nationwide, but just really feel like that, counting all the votes and all that happens at a local level. So appreciate all the work that people, went into doing that and making sure we're doing our part here. And certainly sad to see how, that process has been kind of undermined. And I think there's just as elected officials, up and down all those ballots that were going out there, that when confidence in that system gets undermined in a certain way, it undermines legitimacy of any of the work that we're doing here. And I think especially when people feel like they're on the losing side of something like that, potential for, bad things to happen. And anyway, I kind of say that, to this group, because I think that does, potentially affect, the way people do feel about the work that we do here as an elected body. And then also just that, as we've seen, violent actions taking place, whether it's surrounding elections or racism and all that other stuff, there is, I think, a role that we all have. And certainly, as people become, radicalized or potentially moving in towards violence or threatening violence regarding politics or economics or any of that stuff, I think it's been proven that not necessarily going to talk people out of it, in a rational way, but I think it really is, those close personal relationships and, whether it's friends, family, folks at church, coworkers, those people that we know. So just to kind of be aware and reach out to some of those folks. And especially I think with the change in administration at a national level, and as tensions being as high as what they are, I think there's potential for things to get, even more radicalized. And, there's news about what the FBI is going to think about what's going to happen next week and all that other stuff. So just to make sure we're taking care of each other as a community. And one thing I think we can offer here, and we do offer here, is just public comment period. If people aren't feeling like they have a space to get heard, you know, we don't have town square, especially operating virtually or whatever that is, but you know, we're certainly open to people don't have any place else to rant. People are getting kicked off the internet, whatever. Tech companies are censoring folks or shutting down the way people are talking to each other, whatever that is. We're always going to be open. People got a First Amendment right to be able to speak to us about what they see fit. And yeah, it's like is anybody gonna know what's going on in Juneau if they're not letting people in the building down there and the press access and who does have access? Like, there's certainly questions that are going to be raised, and certainly want to feel like we're doing everything that we can to make people feel heard. So something I think that we can offer. But anyway, go on up to Ms. Zafone.
That's kind of hard to follow, Mr. Zimmerman, but you framed it well. And I'm just going to add that, you know, condolences, thoughts and prayers, and all those people directly affected by the violence that happened. You know, it's kind of easy to imagine what that would look like here. I mean, with them knowing the 9 of us, they all probably know somewhere about where we live and everything like that. So it's definitely a serious issue, and I don't mean to make light of it in any way, regardless of how you feel politically. I do agree that our the Canvas Committee, our ballot monitors, those folks, they did an outstanding job. They're dedicated. It's the same folks every year, and we do know who they are. So kudos to them. Yeah, it is definitely an interesting time. I've been tuned into the news more this last week and a half than probably all year with something other than Corona, which is saying something in itself. Anyway, good meeting for everybody. I look forward to 2021 and the future. Mr. Renshaw, welcome home. I'm a little jealous of that tan. I noticed you hid it from us all meeting. But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in and the reports as always, and I stay safe.
Mrs. Minor.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to Baxter and Lightfoot for volunteering and being a part of the Planning Commission. To go along with what Mr. Zimmerman said is, you know, sometimes getting involved in the community and supporting and taking on those jobs is a way to get yourself heard and to be a part of the solution instead of just getting angry at the system. And so I think it's awesome that people are willing to be a part of that and to work to make their community better. So thanks to them, and thanks to those that helped set up the meeting and the reports, and hope y'all have a good night.
Mr. Shreve.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody who was watching and just for the meeting and being able to do this virtually to keep the borough going, and for the staff and for putting together that good clean audit. It's not easy to be able to do that, and to be able to do it over and over again without very much that we have to do is awesome. And I look forward to this year to seeing what, as part of the finance committee, we'll be able to help with to get through this year once we finally can see what our overnight accommodations taxes are going to look like. So it'll be a good year to really be able to use the finance committee more, and that way we can get ready for next year. And I'd just like to thank everybody for the reports. They're always good. It's good to see the transparency and all that we're doing. That way we can, all the community members can feel like they're a part of the assembly as well. And being able to be on this technology like this, I know we can hit a few more people than just with meeting in person. And so just getting it out here and doing like we were right before we had this, we were preparing ourselves for a full virtual by having it going online already. So, and just like we have said, this is a place to come and let us know what your thoughts are. That way we can start to work with them and on them. And it's always good to hear from the Govins about the area up there, just to keep reminding us to keep looking into it and seeing what we can do to make it better for everybody up in that area. And that's what we're here for, is to help make the borough the best borough in the United States and in Alaska. So that's what, slowly but surely we'll get there. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Canali.
Yeah, thanks everybody for a productive meeting. I echo Mr. Zimmerman's comments, and I think for my part, I think the best we can do, and certainly for myself, is to listen. Listen to what's being said, pay close attention, ask questions, and I feel if people have a voice and they feel they are being heard, then we can, if nothing else, agree to disagree, but do it in a dignified, respectful manner. And I think, from my limited experience so far with the assembly and the borough, that's, certainly the bar's been set very high to adhere to those standards. So I'm very appreciative of that. Other than that, I appreciate the brevity of the meeting this month. It's my 30th wedding anniversary, so I get to go back and celebrate now. Thanks, everybody.
All right. The time and place of the next meeting. Be back here virtually February 10th at 6 p.m. Look forward to seeing everybody then. Till then, stay safe. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you in February.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good
Happy
night.
anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Dominic.
Thanks.
Ruth.
Thank
See ya.
you.